G'day fellas, welcome to another tier list. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, we're currently live over on Twitch, so come say g'day after you finish the video, obviously. I would hate to interrupt your viewing for this evening. You'll notice there's a couple of rude guys in the chat, in particular Gugoots, who said, you YouTube viewers, but I want you to know that there are people in the chat who love you just as equally. We've got Brad Worst as well as Losso saying hello YouTube. So there you go. So this evening we're going to be doing a tier list for ranged cavalry. Now ranged cavalry, it's an important part of Age of Empires 3. And the reason why is because it's a mobile unit that allows you to traverse the map without risking an engagement. And if there is an engagement, it allows you to escape very easily and effectively. Typically you see ranged cavalry spammed as a unit in a lot of games, just simply because of how strong it is as a unit class. Now, not all of the units that we've got listed up here are cavalry, but they do serve the same role as the ranged cavalry or the dragoon unit. So as an example, we've got units here like the Bolas Warrior from the Inca, which has got a slow speed, which I think is technically like heavy infantry or something like that, but it serves the role of anti-cavalry, if that makes sense. And now, obviously, we haven't included the pikeman on here, because the pikeman is heavy infantry and it's a melee unit, whereas the Bolas Warrior is ranged. But we've also included units like the Eagle Runner Knight, which for the Aztecs serves as their dragoon unit. So, where do we begin? I think we begin with the end of the list that we're most confident with. And for me, that starts with the Ruyter. The Ruyter is, in my opinion, the best dragoon unit in the game, full stop. There's no two ways about it. This unit is just simply amazing. And I'm going to explain the reasons why this unit is so good. The first reason why is because it's one pop. It's not two pop, it's one pop. So it means that you're going to be making half as many houses as your opponent is, and you're going to be able to sort of flesh that out. The second reason why is because it packs together really closely with the Reuters that are next to it. And just keep in mind, when I'm pronouncing Ruyter, Ruyter, it's going to be one of those three. I don't actually know what the correct pronunciation is. I've called the unit all three of those in my life. I've never really had an issue, so hopefully we'll just continue and not have that issue. So, with the Ruyter, the reason why it's so strong is because it packs in tightly, and it's a very cheap unit. It costs, if I remember correctly, 30 food and 75 coin. And when you compare that to a Dragoon, which is, say, 90 food and 90 coin, I can tell you right now, I'd much rather have 2 Reuters than 2 Dragoons. It also has the guard upgrade. Some people can go to Carabiner. Some people would view this as a bad thing because it's a little bit more expensive to get the guard upgrade, but it does give you that extra 10% HP. The Ruyter also gets the Cav Combat upgrade from the Dutch Home City, which is I think it's just a flat 15% upgrade. I can double check and see exactly what that is, but I'm 99% sure it's a flat, sorry, wrong button. I'm pretty sure it's a flat 15% upgrade from the Home City in Age 3, which is an incredibly strong card. Oh my god, I don't even have it in this deck. Are you serious? I've got it in my naval deck, but not my land deck. God, Drongo, your decks are terrible right now. Alright, hopefully you're not using this video to look for decks. Yeah, 15% hit points, 15% all action damages. And this affects Hussars as well, so this is an incredibly good card. And the fact that you're sending this card, you're going to be sending this card all the time, it just makes Reuters even stronger, because you're always going to be sending this card. So, that's the reason why Reuters are number one, in my opinion. They also synergize incredibly well with the Dutch economy. Dutch are a coin-focused economy, and as a result, it just means that it's so easy for you to get Reuters going out and pumping. So the next S-tier Dragoon, to be honest, I don't know if we could call it an S-tier Dragoon. Like when we're looking at this list, it's sort of important that we flesh it out, but I guess that's something that we can talk about as we move on. But I would definitely say the Eagle Runner Knight. The Eagle Runner Knight, it's slow. Once it gets, it's slow to build up. But once you build up the mass of Eagle Runner Knights, they get to a point where they're able to overwhelm the opponent. They can fight against their counters. They can fight against skirmishers. They can fight against musketeers. This unit is just absolutely insane. It's got crazy high DPS, very high speed, and it also packs in incredibly tightly. This is one of those units that, again, pack in tightly. What am I talking about when I say pack in tightly? It means that if you are to look at the units, okay, if you look at a Dragoon, okay, a Dragoon looks like this, all right? So let's like say that's a Dragoon, okay? When a Dragoon is packed in with all of the other Dragoons, when you select like 5 or 6 Dragoons, okay, they're going to be all standing there like this, okay? But what's different about Ruyters and Eagle Runner Knights is they pack in a lot closer. So let's turn this off. They pack in like this. They back in much, much, much closer. And so that gives them, essentially it gives them a much higher DPS bonus because you've got all of these units that are really tight together like this. They clumped up, they clump up really well. And this is a great thing because if you know how to manipulate this, and as an example, like people at the top of the ladder will know how to manipulate this, then you can utilize this. And that's one of the great things about the Eagle Run Knight is because it can clump up as well very effectively, much more effectively than any of the other units that are down here. In addition to that, it's quite an expensive unit, 75 food, 75 coin, but it's also got a lot of good upgrades for it as well. It's got a range increase, it's got a combat card, or sorry, it's got 3 combat cards. It's just an incredibly strong unit, and especially once it reaches late game, these guys are they're just amazing. They're crazy. So now we're gonna move down the list. I'm gonna be a little bit I don't know what the word is, but I guess controversial with the next ones. So we're gonna be putting the war wagons in. Now the war wagons used to be quite high. The war wagons used to be like an A tier when it came to ranged cavalry. And the reason why was because they had a high range, but their range got nerfed. And when their range got nerfed, they kind of dropped a tier. And in my opinion, at the moment, the war wagon is probably somewhere between the B and the C tier. And oh, sorry, we've got Kaiser Klein in the chat at the moment. Ruyters are rather A tier, Black Rider are S tier. Oh, Kaiser, I don't like you. What? I don't think you're gonna like what I've got to say. Then here, it's important that you remember that when it comes to what we're looking at, what we're comparing the Black Rider to, this is a Swedish Black Rider. Okay, it's not Black Riders from the German home city. It's not Black Riders from the Dutch home city. It's the Swedish Black Rider, and your ability as the Swedes to train them. So that's what I'm talking about. Oh, Bow Rider. Okay, Bow Rider. Don't worry. If you meant Bow Rider, then yes, sure, I'll agree with that. Ruyters are rather A tier and Bow Riders S. Yeah, I could definitely see that. So the reason why war wagons are, for me, they're either a B or a C. And the reason why is because they've got a very high melee resist. And typically, you're not going to be using typically in games, you're going to have ranged units against ranged units, okay? Now, in 1v1, it's a little bit different. In team games, it's very different. In team games, war wagons would be D tier. In 1v1s, they'd be B tier. And there are good things about war wagons, and then there are bad things about war wagons. Some of the bad things about war wagons is that they overkill units. But in some matchups, this can actually be a really good thing. So if we were to say, looking at the Germans versus the Lakota matchup, the war wagons are very strong because you can actually one-shot the dog soldiers because you overkill so much that even, say, like 8 or 9 war wagons will single-handedly kill a dog soldier and just snipe it. So I would say that the war wagon would be in the B tier just simply because it's got high range. It is expensive though, but it doesn't have that ranged resist. That ranged resist is what makes the ranged cavalry class very strong. It's the speed combined with the range resist. It means it's able to take flexible fights. Aussie Drongo, what would you say of the fact that war wagon are more viable in team? I wouldn't say that they are viable in team. I mean, obviously they are viable in team if you're up against like a French player, because gendarmes are going to be a pretty big threat. But I would say overall that war wagons wouldn't. I wouldn't. If I had a German player on my team, I wouldn't want them making war wagons. I mean, I really wouldn't want a German player on my team if I'm honest. But anyway, so we'll move on to a little bit further. So the next one is something that has already been spoken about in chat, and that's the Bow Rider. So the Lakota Bow Rider is also an S tier. So the reason why it's S tier is because it's available in the second age. And so the reason why that is incredibly strong is because it allows you to control the tempo. If you're playing against Lakota, you can't open with a stable. If you open with a stable against Lakota, it's a death sentence because the Lakota are just very easily able to counter you by making bow riders. On top of that, the Lakota war chief, and while we're not including the war chief in this, we must, as it's an implicit part of the civilization of the Lakota, to be able to have a war chief and to have bow riders with it. They've got the fastest speed in the game, which means they're able to chase down any raids. They're able to escape from any fights that they want. They can fight whenever they like. And as a result, it means that the bow riders are able to always win in their fights because they're always able to trade very effectively. They're also, despite being quite a high cost unit, they're incredibly effective against most units, incredibly effective against musketeers. They fight well against skirmishers. And if you've got enough of them, they can very easily overwhelm opponent forces. So I would definitely be arguing for the bow rider to be in the S tier. So if we were moving down the tier list now, I'd probably be putting the Portuguese Dragoon, the Jeanette, in A tier. And the reason why is because while the Jeanette is considered to be a top tier Dragoon unit, it doesn't have any what's the word that I'm looking for? It doesn't have any huge bonuses over the other Dragoon units, with the exception of its range. And range is an incredibly important statistic, but it's important to consider how often it is that you see this. In games where Portugal's played, I would argue that a lot of the games would reach the 4th age, but in 1v1 especially, the range of a Jeanette, it's not a relevant factor. And that's what makes the Jeanette Dragoon only A tier. It would definitely be S tier in team games, the Jeanette Dragoon. I would even argue it might be S tier on water maps, but on land maps especially, I would say that it's A tier. And whilst Dragoons are quite solid units, the reason the Portuguese Dragoon is the best. Actually, I wouldn't say it's the best. The British one might be just as good. And the reason why is because the British Dragoon has upgrades. So if we go and take a look at the British home city, you can take a look at the cards that they've got in the second age, and they've got upgrades for cavalry. 15% health, 15% attack, as well as 15% hit points and 15% attack. So they've got plus 30% coming in from cards. And that's why the British Dragoon is so strong. When you compare that to, say, the Portuguese Dragoon, which does have upgrades. I think it's got a 20% upgrade, a single 20% upgrade in the third age here. So it's got the 20% upgrade. And then on top of that, it's got the +4 range. But the +4 range, especially in 1v1s, is not, in my opinion, a huge factor. And as a result, I don't think it is an S tier unit, not in the way that these units are. But the British one, if I've got a British player on my team, I want them spamming Dragoons. The Dragoons that they've got the range resist. Well, this sounds like Stranger Things, doesn't it? It kind of sounded like Stranger Things. So I would be arguing that these goons are pretty much on par with each other. If it came to a team game, I'd rather have a Portuguese player spamming my Dragoons than a British player. But then again, I'd rather have a Dutch player spamming Ruyters over a Jeanette. And then moving into the other Dragoon units, so I would put these guys in B tier along with the war wagons. And the reason why is just because if you were to take a look at their units, I don't think they've got the same level of upgrades. If we have a look at the French, I might be wrong here actually. I think, yeah, so French only affects... Whoa!
I got something to report to you.
Smashing the 3-month sub button. Love the stream.
Thanks, Achamian. I appreciate it a lot, my friend. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying the stream. And that 3-month subscriber button looking, or 3-month subscriber badge looking beautiful. So with one of the primary differences that the French Dragoons have got against, say, the British Dragoons, is that their hand or their cavalry upgrades only affect hand cavalry. They don't affect the Dragoons. Cavalry combat does, but not these two cards. So they're missing that 15%. So they're losing efficiency. RIP to his fancy 2-month subscriber badge. Indeed, Joel Cells, indeed. Look how beautiful yours is looking. Damn. So that's why I would be saying that the French Dragoon would be lower than the British Dragoon. And then if we were to look at the Spanish Dragoon, it is the same for them. It's hand cavalry and hand cavalry. Obviously, they do have the... Oh, okay, I take that back. They don't, obviously. They've only got hand cavalry combat in the 3rd age as well. Which means if you've got a Spanish player on your team, you don't want them making Dragoons because they've got no upgrades for their Dragoons. Which this is part of the reason why Spain in team games is so terrible, because they've got no ranged unit that they can spam. The only option they really have are skirmishers with unction. That's it. Everything else is like... I mean, you can make Rodoleros, you can make Garachista, or as they're called, Lancers. When is the ESOC finals? ESOC finals are in 57 minutes, and I'm keeping you nice and warm until they're on. So that's where I would be putting these two, just simply because you can't get those extra bonuses. Now, this is probably going to be a little bit controversial, okay? But the Swedish Black Rider, a lot of people would be like, I think that is an S tier. Nope. They might even think it's A tier or B tier or C tier, and I'm still going to say nope. I honestly think it's D tier. And the reason why I think Garokista... Oh, thank you, Gaia. The reason why I think that the Black Rider is D tier is because it's incredibly expensive. It's 270 coin. That's a lot of coin. What can you do with 270 coin? Well, you can make 7 Carolians. The only time I'm ever having Black Riders are when I ship them from my home city against civilizations like the Russians, when they're running me around the map with Operniks, or if I'm against the Lakota and they're making Rifle Riders. That's the only time I will ever even think about making the unit. They're not good in Dragoon Wars because they've got ranged resist. Oh, sorry, because they don't have range resist. Range resist is what makes these units up here so strong. The reason why the War Wagon is allowed to stay up in the B tier is because it's got extra range. Whereas the Black Rider doesn't have that extra range. Sure, it's got a lot of damage. Sure, it's got a lot of health, but it is fragile. 15 skirmishes will one-shot this. And as a result, it means you've got to be so careful with them. And that's why I think it's not viable for you as a Swedish player to be making Black Riders, especially spamming Black Riders, against any sort of, ranged cavalry composition at all, unless you're playing against the Lakota and they're making the Rifle Riders. Shipped Black Riders from the home city are quite reasonable, I would argue, just because they're a little bit more cost effective than just simply having or spending 270 coin a pop on these guys. They're also 3 pop as well. So they're just an incredibly expensive unit, very ineffective. They don't do what a ranged cavalry unit should be doing. It's not that they don't do what a ranged cavalry unit should be doing. It's that players will typically spam these units. Okay, they will spam them. They will make 40 of these. You make 40 of these, and you're still going to lose against Dragoons because you don't have range resist, and that's why. All right, so the next one, the Musket Rider. I'm pretty close to putting this in A tier. I don't know. Maybe we can sort of go to the chat and see. Just because I'm not particularly familiar with the unit. Obviously, it's a lot more coin heavy than it is food heavy, but it packs a punch. And that's the important thing to remember. It's got great shipments. I think it's only got 1 shipment. It's got a shipment of 5 from the home city. Let's have a look. Howdah is the correct pronunciation. So it's got the 1 shipment from the home city. It's also got a bunch of cavalry upgrade cards. So we've got the Cav HP in H3 as well as Cav Attack in HP in H3. So it does have that going for it, but still, if I've got an Iroquois player on my team or a Howdah player on my team, I'm going to want them making Forest Prowlers. I'm not going to want them making Musket Riders, but that's not to take anything away from the Musket Riders themselves because still they're a strong unit. I just don't think that they're on these 2 tiers at all. Mainly because it's very expensive when it comes to coin. If I'm playing in a team game, I don't want my Iroquois, my Howdah ally to be making Musket Riders at all. And Shafi saying, early age 3, it's A tier. I definitely do agree. Kevin saying, it's S tier just because 30% range resist and it's pretty cheap. Plus the aura for the War Chief. Actually, you know what, Kevin? I will agree with that. I won't go all the way to S tier, though. I will agree with you just because of the aura for the War Chief. It makes it quite strong, and the 30% range resist as well. It is, like, it's quite coin heavy. Where is the Carolian, asks Zenny. Don't you worry, Zenny. We're going to do a tier list just for Carolians, where we've only got the S tier, and we just put 1,000 Carolians in there. Alright, so then... So that's where I'd be putting the Musket Rider. Now we kind of move a little bit more into the interesting units. The other units that I guess that would be easier to place in here would be the Cav Archers. Cav Archers are a little bit more difficult to talk about. Both the Otto and the Russian Cav Archer we'll talk about together. When it comes to the upgrades for them, I think the Ottomans have got a single upgrade for them in the 3rd age, which is a 15%, if I remember correctly. Let's have a look. It's a 15% Cav Combat. And the Russians, I think they've also got the same card. Let's double check though. They do. So it's the 15%. Russians have also got the 5 Cav Archers. I think the Ottos have also got that as well. But whilst these units are... I would say that these units towards like as the game goes on, these units get stronger. But in the early Fortress Age, these units especially are quite weak. As the game begins to hit Industrial Age though, or late Fortress, I would argue that these units are quite strong. Because you're typically not, or you're going to be avoiding microing overly when it comes to like Skirmgoon botting. Russia's got the 10% team card in Age 1 as well. Let's have a look at that one. Oh, true, they do. They've got the 10% hit points. That's actually quite a big deal. That's a really good card when you think about it. That's a lot, man. 10% hit points to the team on all cavalry. That's not just hand cavalry. That's all cavalry. That's pretty good. That's literally almost like a 15% HP card. Plus, it gives 4 line of sight. That's not bad. I don't think it's enough to bring them out of the C tier though. Maybe it's enough to like change their order. But I definitely agree that these units are underrated. But I think that in the early Fortress Age, which is where you most commonly see games decided, that these units are inferior to the units above them. And the reason why is just simply because of their animation. It's very difficult to fire these units. It can be done, don't get me wrong. There's a great game, which was actually on the N30 YouTube channel. So if you type in, if we go over to the N30 YouTube, they've got a video of I Am Grunt playing against Gluck the boss. And I Am Grunt is microing the mercenary equivalent of these units, and he's doing a great job of it. But the animation on them is just too slow. But they're an incredibly tanky unit. Why is Musket Rider not higher than Ruyter? The 30% range resist is super godlike. And Kevin saying we also forgot the 1.5 rate of fire too for Cav Archer, to be honest. Yeah, I agree. Cav Archer a C at least. I think, yeah, where they are at the moment is quite reasonable. They do have a high rate of fire, which is why they're stronger. Like, if I've got an ally on my team who's Ottoman and who's like Portuguese or British, if it's like towards the industrial era and the Otto guy wants to switch to Cav Archer, I'm happy for him to do that. But if he was like, I'm going to FF and go Cav Archer, kind of like how Gibson did that, I would be a little bit concerned. I just don't feel like they're the strongest units in comparison. You think Cav Archer is better than Spanish Goon? So would you be arguing for Spanish Goon? So, yeah, I guess. I mean, you almost never see Spanish Dragoon. And I think that's part of the reason why. I could see the argument to bring these guys up. Spain and French Goon not quite on the same tier too. And the French Goon is not the same tier as the War Wagon. Would you say that the War Wagon is higher than the French Dragoon? I mean, in a 1v1, I'd prefer to have Skirm Goon as French rather than Skirm War Wagon. Definitely. I don't think... But then I guess the War Wagon's got other uses. Like in the Lakota matchup, it's very good against... really, really good against... against the dog soldiers. War Wagon is only remotely good in industrial. But I guess, would you put it down on the same tier as the Spanish Dragoon? I don't think so. I'd probably argue that like you could move it down. Probably on C tier, you reckon? Yeah, if I was honest, I'd probably have them down there as well. I don't consider them at all to be a favorable unit. All right, shall we move on to the next unit? Next unit is the Keshik. I really don't know how I feel about this unit, the Keshik. It's hard because when you're looking at a unit like the Keshik, it's important to remember it's a very cheap unit. But then you got to remember how you get it. There's one banner army that you can make, the black... Is it the black flag? Which is available from the outpost of all places. So, look, I love the Keshik. I just don't think that... I just don't think it's got potential. It's also an archer, similar to the Cav Archer. And it's just so weak. It's very fragile. There's two armies. Yes, there's the black flag, and then there is... You can do Keshik and Pike, and then you can do Keshik and Flamethrower. Is that it? Keshik is C tier. If you could spam it, it would just be good as Zams. I agree 100%. If you could spam Keshiks, fuck, that would be so good, man. I would love that. It's like a Ruyter. It's like a Zam, isn't it? Sean Game saying, just joined. Are we tiering goons? We are indeed tiering goons. Yes. We've got a couple of weird little ones in here. Like, obviously, we've got the Eagle Runner Knight, but we've also got the Howdah, as well as the Bolas Warrior from the Incas. So, yeah, it's every unit that's somewhat, like, remotely kind of Dragoonish that civilizations have got access to on a regular basis. Applecake says, feels like most Chinese units in a nutshell. If you could spam it, it would be great. Exactly. That's exactly it. Sean Game asking, no Black Riders. We do have Black Riders, but only for the Swedes. And so that's why we've included them down in the D tier, just because they're very expensive, very costly, and they've got range resist. They've got melee resist. Keshiks are like Strelets. Yeah, they're like Strelets that you can only build with pikemen, and both of them are very weak. So, yeah. Next unit, I think probably the Zamburak. Zamburak's an interesting one. Because if we were going to talk about the Second Age, I'd be putting the Zamburak in the S tier. And the Zamburak gets strong in the Fortress Age as well. Oh god, it's almost tempting for me to put this in S tier, really. It's so tempting for me to put it in S tier, but I think that they're incredibly good for a couple of reasons. The first one is because you can get them so early. You can get them carded. You can get them carded at the wazoo. You get the Mansabar as well, which just makes them even stronger. And because you've got a mass of them from the Second Age, it's like you're very incentivized to build that Mansabar as well. So you're always going to be getting it. You have the British Consulate on top of it. And I mean, one of the things that I guess you'd sort of subtract away from it, you'd say, okay, well, you've got to upgrade it, but that's not a super duper big deal. But the reason why it's A tier is just simply because it's available in the Second Age. Once it gets late game, I don't think you'd want to be spamming these. And there are going to be times where you're going to be building Sepoy instead of them. But I think that it's reasonable to have them here just because they're cheap, they're one population, they're fast as lightning, they've got a really high bonus against cavalry, they do their job incredibly well, and they're upgradable. The only problem that you really have is when it gets to late game. Once you start getting to the industrial age, then they're not as effective because they don't have access. Correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have access to the range cavalry caracol. Psionic coming in saying, How come I don't see Ashigarus in the S tier? Thomas saying they do not. Yeah, okay. So that's one of the sort of common things amongst all of these, or most of these units here, is that they've all got access to that range increase. They don't get the arsenal ups. Yeah, okay. Fish, he's joking, Fish. Oh, you're saying it's a skirm counter. Are Brit goons stronger than France? Yes, much stronger. The reason Namapumpy is that Brits have upgrade cards for the Dragoons, whereas the French have only got one. So French have only got one card in Age 3 that upgrades their Dragoons, whereas their two cards in Age 2 only upgrade their hand cavalry, whereas the Brits have got access to... Oh, I'll just do it this way, it's probably easier. They've got access to the cavalry combat in Age 3, and then in Age 2, both of their hit points and damage affects all cavalry. It's not just hand cavalry. And so that's why they get better. Zams are great, but not in the same tier as Port Dragoons. I would say that they serve different roles at different points in the game. Obviously, Port Dragoons are available in the third age, so it's not like you're going to be making them in the second age, whereas the Zams are available in the second age. Why are Goon Ports not S tier, by the way? Just simply because the bonuses that you get from them really don't justify an S tier spot. Like, range is great, sure, but, you know, the majority of top tier players don't even include Portuguese range for the Dragoons in their decks anymore, just because it got nerfed. Is this a late game tier list, or why are Black Riders at the bottom? The Black Riders are at the bottom because they are very expensive, and they've got 40% melee resist, whereas they need range resist to be particularly strong. Ruyter's own Port Dragoons? Yes, they do. Yeah. Dragoon combat is 20% and Royal Guard upgrade. Correct. Yes. That is 100% right, Harrison. But I don't think it's I don't think it's enough for. Or Gaia coming in and saying Port Goon also gets plus 5% on the combat card, still as good as Brit Goons, though Royal Guard a bit better than Brit Goon. Yeah, that's why I've got them up here. Obviously, they get the range increase as well, but I don't think the range increase is enough to justify it at plus 4 range. Plus 18 range Goons, sure, they're nice. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them, but I don't think they're on the same tier, the same way that the Ruyter or the Eagle Runner Knight or the Bow Rider is. Alright, so moving on to the next unit, I think we might go with the Howdah. I think the Howdah is quite interesting. I really don't know where to put the Howdah. And the primary reason why is because it serves quite a niche role in that it's a Dragoon unit that's got a very long range, a very high damage, a really high cost. It's like there are so many interesting uses for this unit, and as a Swede player, I am unfortunately one of those uses because I don't have any counter to the Howdah with the exception of Jaegers. But then the problem is that Howdahs one-shot Jaegers very efficiently. So they're just like, they're a very expensive unit, but they will die to skirm masses. H2O famously created an account called Howdah. How about that? Right after the how about that? Catch me outside, how about that? Girl got famous. He created an account where he exclusively used India and exclusively made Howdahs once he reached the third age. And I think he got to like top 10, just making Howdahs. Now obviously H2O was a god, but he was able to achieve that. It's what the War Wagon wants to be? Yeah, it's what the War Wagon wants to be, exactly. I've never encountered Howdahs in 1v1. Yeah, they're quite rare to see just because India have a lot of options when it comes to anti-cavalry. They've got Sepoys, they've got Zamburak, and then on top of that, then they've got the Howdah as well. But they also serve quite a strong role as anti-artillery as well. But they're very expensive when it comes to their population cost as well as to their actual resource cost as well. And then, so after that, so I'd probably be having them at B. I mean, I'd be open to having a discussion about it. Will this go up on YouTube? Yeah, this will go up on YouTube. Did Ruyter beat Goon cost efficiently? Yeah, definitely. 100%. So the next unit would be the Rifle Rider. Now, the Rifle Rider is an interesting one. And the reason why the Rifle Rider is an interesting one because it is a Dragoon unit. Okay, so it will counter your heavy cavalry. It will counter the... it will counter the raids that your opponent's got. But I don't even know if it should really be included in this list, if I'm being honest. And the reason why is because you can't spam this against any of these units. Because all of these units here counter this unit. Because this is heavy cavalry as well. And it's for that reason that I think that we're going to have to bring it down. I don't think that we can include this in the top tiers. It serves a purpose. And that purpose is not as a ranged cavalry. It's as this weird unit that... It's the strangest unit that exists. It counters heavy infantry, it counters heavy cavalry, but then it's countered by skirmishers and pikemen and dragoons as well. Actually, I'm not sure if it's countered by skirmishers. I'd have to double check that. But let me tell you now, though, if Sweden could make these, I would be training these. I wouldn't be ignoring them in the same way that I ignore the Black Rider. I would be actually training these units if I could as Sweden. So I guess that's something to say. Because right now, I don't train Black Riders at all, unless I'm against the Lakota, because they're making these units. And that's really it. Alright, so then the next units... I've left the units that I'm unfamiliar with to last. So we're going to chuck the Bolas Warrior. I think I'm just going to have to throw this in D tier. And the reason why it comes down to speed. These guys have got 4 movement speed. They can't chase enemy raids away. I think they're down to 1 population now, which is a good thing. Okay, they're only 1 pop, but they're a slinger unit, which means they have to wind up and they have to throw. And if the unit that they're targeting dies while they're winding up, they've got to reset their wind up. And it reduces their overall DPS by a huge amount. You might not think it's a lot, but it starts to add up over the course of a fight. No G-Rex saying, Sweden have Karolians. You know, maybe we should have included Karolians in this, because Karolians do serve the purpose of the ranged cavalry. Technically. Right? Like, they counter the Cuirassier, the Hussar. And then I think the final unit in here, which probably is a bit of a surprise to you guys, the Japanese Yabusame. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know whether I'd go C tier. I think I'd probably have to go C tier on this one. And no, you know what? It's going to have to go D tier. I'd probably put it at like maybe the top of... no, putting it below the Keshik. And the reason why... It serves a purpose, but its purpose is not to kill enemy cavalry. It's to kill artillery. And that's it. It kills artillery. And that's what it does. It's absolutely amazing at it. You know, if you've got a couple of falconets out and your enemy makes these, damn, that sucks. Because these things will take down artillery incredibly quickly. But when it comes to killing enemy cavalry, Japan's going to have to rely on the Ashigaru. They're just not going to be able to do it without them. Lunatic Fringe saying, can we have a further look at the Bolas Warrior? I don't quite understand the unit and its upgrades. Yeah, sure, we can do that. What map should we play on? Maybe like my favorite one, Yellow River. Kit05 saying, good list, Stronger. I agree with everything. Thanks, Kit05. Fat Chode saying, Yabusame kill Cav just fine. Well. Do they kill it as efficiently as a German war wagon? Because the German war wagon's in C tier. They kill it bloody efficiently. Or a Spanish Dragoon. So let's go a whole lot of love. And speed always wins. Let's age up. And we're going to make our Kalanka. That's not what I wanted to make. I wanted to make some houses. We're going to take a look at the Bolas Warrior. Oh, that's the Haraka. So, the Bolas Warrior's got 14 range. I hate that it's got a guardian attack. That's the silliest thing. Why does it have a guardian attack? And why is the guardian attack... like... ooh, just for the sake of it, just give it like... just let it have 2 area effect against guardians, please. Just so that I don't have to see this twice. So, like, from a stats perspective, this looks like relatively good, right? You've got a rate of fire of 3, which isn't terrible. I mean, it's pretty bad. But you've got 18 attack and then a 2 AoE with a 2 times multiplier against Cav. And then from the home city, you've got... that's all melee upgrades. That's all melee upgrades. I think the Bolas Warrior have got an upgrade in the 4th age. Oh my god, that is so ugly. And teaches them how to inflict extra melee damage against cavalry and shock infantry. So it adds melee damage. It adds melee damage. Of course it adds melee damage. No, nothing about what I've just seen makes me want to move them any higher than this. It makes me want to add a new tier just for them. Can someone explain shock infantry and give some example of the units? Shock infantry is cavalry that doesn't have a horse. They're really fast men that run. So you've got the Coyote Runner from the Aztec. You've got the Chimu Runner from the Inca. You've also got the Eagle Runner Knight from the Aztec as well. So yeah, look, honestly, if I could make another tier underneath this, I would, and I'd put the Bolas Warrior in it. I don't see any reason why a person should be making a Bolas Warrior other than to like style on an opponent. That would essentially be it. Unless you're styling on an opponent, don't make a Bolas Warriors. Because if you want anti-cavalry, just build the Spearmen. Alright, do we have any fellas in the chat at the moment that are top 10? I see Wicked Cossack is here at the moment. I'd love to get your opinions on the list overall, whether you change anything, whether there's anything that stands out to you that doesn't look accurate or doesn't look like it belongs where it is. Bolas have a ranged snare. They're good to mix in with your archers just for the utility. I didn't realize they have a ranged snare. Kanoki says, you forgot the Yojimbo. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kanoki. Aren't Yojimbo available for the Japanese as a mercenary shipment? Where you can send them twice? There's Yabusame. And that's it, right? I mean, you get 5 Yojimbo here, but I don't think they're worth including. But thanks. Wicked Cossack saying, hard to find any criticisms with the list, to be honest. Oh, thanks. Well, I've got the Wicked Cossack tick of approval. That's good to hear. If you're playing on a team, though, like, typically, you're going to be wanting to make ranged cav and ranged infantry in a team game, typically. Raider asking, what is special about the auto cav archer? I don't know exactly what you mean. It's got a high rate of fire. It's got an upgrade from the home city that you can send. And if I remember correctly, is it the Grenadiers and the Cav Archers that are Royal Guard? So it might be Royal Guard as well. But it is Gaia saying Yabusame is B tier. Why do you think the Yabusame is B tier, Gaia? Is it because of the high range that's available in the 3rd age? Because it's actually good? Is there a situation where you'd be building Yabusame from every perspective but the cost? They have like 7 times against artillery. Yeah, they have 7 times against artillery, exactly. Which means they serve the role of a culverin very well. I'd argue that they don't serve the role of a dragoon overly well, though. Gaia saying, I actually make Yabusame rather than Ashi. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't realize. Wicked Cossack saying, yeah, the Rajput is an insane unit if you ignore the cost. Raider saying, Grenadier and Hussar are the royal units for the Otto. Is it really the Hussar? What are they called? The Hussar. I can probably check in here, can't I? Bostanchi. Is this new? I don't think the Hussar have always been their Royal Guard unit, have they? I know that the Grenadier have, but I don't remember the Hussar being. I know that the Life Guard Hussar from the Brits have always existed. The King's Life Guard, they're now called. I don't ever remember seeing that. It's always been Huskran, I'm sure. Okay, alright, I believe you. The name changed in the definitive edition. Oh, that might be why. I wonder what it's called in the original. I'd probably recognize it. Should we go check? No, I can't be bothered. Bostanchi means a gardener. Oh, gardener! That's what they were called, Gardener Hussars. Ah, okay. They were called Gardener Hussars, I remember now. As soon as you said that, they were called Gardener Hussars. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, just because of what Guy has said, in that he makes them instead. Big Tommy is an insane unit if you ignore needing tuck, tuck, tuck. True. Tommy is the number one. Tommy's S+. I mean, would you really rather a Yabusame over a War Wagon? I don't know if I could agree with that. Hey, Eric Sea Dragon. How's it going, mate? I guess I'm not familiar enough with the unit to really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. Not doing too bad. Having a bit of a fun night. We're doing a tier list at the moment. We're rating all of the ranged cavalry that's in the game, or at least all of the ranged cavalry that's like readily available. All right, let me begin aging up. Where's my stable? There it is. I don't have any shrines. All right, you just make a TC then. Alright, so let's take a look. Fuck, they've got 18 attack, man. That is 18 range. That's so much. 8 times against artillery. 3.5 against cav. But the big thing here is that they've got a 1.5 multiplier. A 1.5 rate of fire. Which means that if you go and take these bad boys up against, like, a monitor lizard. Wow, are they actually good? They might actually be good. They got 50% range resist as well. I mean, they wouldn't do very well in Dragoon Wars, I don't think. But have a look how fast he fires. See how fast that firing rate is? I mean, he's almost going to lose to the monitor lizard. But then the problem is... Oh, he fires like the Yumi. He fires like the Yumi in that you don't need to... Whoa. Whoa. Hey, fellas. None of that. None of that, guys. He also gets some pretty good upgrades. Because I guess the question for me is like, would I be making this in a team game? If I was playing as Japan, if I had Japan on my team, would I want them to be making Yabusames? They get 20% to all action damages. I don't think... Oh, and here we go. Attack is increased and they do more damage against artillery. They get 2 bonuses. Adds 1 to all action damages bonus against artillery. Wait, but then it adds -1? Oh, to siege attack damage against artillery. I guess when you throw in like the daimyo and the shogun and everything like that, get pretty big. I wonder if there's any other upgrades for them. That's just Nanigata. Sorry, Naginata. I guess we keep them in B tier then, just because of the range that they've got. Daimyo and Pavilion. Oh yeah, true, and the Pavilion, yeah, and the Jap cons. Oh man, we could totally. Yeah, you're not wrong, guy. Hey, they could actually be pretty good, man. All right, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. I'll let you have that one. %50 range resist is massive. 18. God, Japan have got such good units. Does Dutch Arsenal also buff Yabusame? Oh my god. Can we just make the most overpowered Yabusame that's ever existed right now? Are we going to do that? I think... Oh, I don't have the cards in my deck. Hold on. Let me put them in. Just for the memes. I want to see like what this bad boy looks like. God. If I'm playing a team game and my Japanese opponent's like, hey, I'm going to make Yumi and Yabusame, I'm going to be like, go for it, man. Well, like we're on a learning experience today. A whole lot of love. Speed always wins, baby. Alright, so we're going to go with the Golden Pavilion. And then we're going to go with the Shogunate. And then get a consulate up as well. So we go Dutch allies, get the Dutch arsenal. So now we've got the Yabusame, which is being... Let's just chuck him over here. So it's got 12 range. Oh, you can't get range cavalry caracol. Oh, they're so cheeky, aren't they? They knew it would be overpowered. They knew it would be overpowered. That's why they removed it. Oh, they're so cheeky. They were like, that'd be too good. And then we go and have a look at the memes. So we get those two. So now we've got 17 range on it. Or 17. Add the daimyo. It's there. Oh, look at him destroying it. They don't have any other upgrades in here. So it's got 19 attack. With the 9 times. I love that card literally is like 20% plus adds 1 times multiplier. It's got an 8 times multiplier and it just gives it 9 times. Like, fuck, man. Couldn't you think of something more creative than that? Like, you literally just went from 8 times to 9 times. So that's with the daimyo. Does it change with the shogun? Shogun's got a different ability, doesn't it? Let's go, what's the map one? X marks the spot. They're not like 7.25 movement speed though, but I mean in a straight up fight, I feel like they'd actually be really good. God, they do so much damage against artillery, man. They like, obviously artillery we've got a 75% range resist, but they're doing 19 times 9. That's like 200 damage to artillery. Do they one-shot Vils? No, they don't. Oh, they got 0.5 against Vils. Man, their ranged attack looks so good. Oh, they'd be so good for micro. Can you imagine Yumi with these, man? God, they do some damage, don't they? Look at that. Oh, get one shot. Oh my god, it didn't get one shot at all! What the hell? I barely even touched it. Yeah, come on, that's artillery, right? It's artillery. Ah, it's not artillery, it's a siege unit. Yeah, get blown up. Oh man, I thought the flamethrower was I thought the flamethrower was artillery. Okay. I'm surprisingly optimistic about the Yabusame. Wow. Just when you thought Japan couldn't get any stronger, they go and throw out an 18 range Dragoon that's actually viable. I guess we'll keep it B tier for now. I'd probably even put it above the Howdah. I don't know, Gaia, what do you reckon? Put it above the Cav Archers as well? It seems pretty good. I mean, my fear is that, like, against skirmishers, against, you know, against Carolians, it's probably going to have a harder time. It's obviously very, it's very dependent on making sure that it is attacking the right thing. Has very high multipliers. It's kind of like the Zamburak. No, Noji Rex saying my whole life has been a lie. The Tartar Cav Archer. The Tartar. That's the Russian one, right? Home city, Russia. Yeah, Tatar. Russian Cav Archer is just a very good late game unit. Yeah, I would agree with that. Wait, Russian and Turk CA better than Dragoons? Yeah, better than the Spanish Dragoon, definitely. Spanish Dragoon doesn't have any upgrades. It doesn't really... It almost never gets made in team games and in 1 versus 1. It's incredibly rare to see. But if Sweden had it, I'd make it. I could say that much. Alright, well, I think that might be the end of the tier list. I'm pretty happy with this tier list. I think that this tier list has been on point. If you'd like to make your own tier list, I'm going to put a link in the chat now for you guys. Alright, I'll also leave a link down in the description on YouTube, because this will inevitably be uploaded to YouTube. But other than that, I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video. And come say g'day on Twitch, because I'm sure that we're still probably live over there on Twitch. Vividly saying, I dislike your no-chew tier list. Alright, Vividly. Okay. Let's for a second pretend that this is the Chinese Manchu, okay? This is... Oh, well, actually, let's pretend this is the Chinese Manchu for a second, okay? Where do we put it? Do you want to know where we put it? We put it in S tier. That's as simple as it gets. The Chinese Manchu is imperative to the Chinese playstyle. China lack anti-cavalry. Well, not lack, but their anti-cavalry isn't the strongest, and it needs to be supplemented by the Manchu. The Manchu is what enables the Chinese to actually be able to defend against cavalry in the early to mid fortress game. And that's why it would be up there. But seeing as you can't train it, and seeing as it's a shipment, and we're not judging shipments here, we're judging units. It would not be included in the list. Royal Clan AOE saying, I don't understand why the Ruyter is S tier. The Ruyter is S tier because it is incredibly cost effective, 1 population, stacks incredibly well, and what do I mean by that? I mean this. So this is how a standard Dragoon will stack. This is how the Ruyter stacks. But to be honest, the Ruyter actually stacks like this. Hold on. If we go like that, the Ruyter stacks like this. Whereas like a normal, like Dragoons will stack like that. And so all the Reuters, and like when you picture it's in like a Dragoon war or something, right? And you've got all the Reuters here, and they're all firing. All of the, oh, let me put that in a different color. They all get their shots off, right? They're all getting their shots off here as you do the attack move onto the front line. Whereas these guys are like really having to reach to get over here. This guy doesn't get an attack off. This guy doesn't. This guy doesn't. This guy gets an attack off. This guy does, and this guy does as well. But these guys over here don't get attacks off. And so that's why the Ruyter is incredibly strong, because as you're microing throughout the game, you're always going to be having incredibly efficient trades, because all of your units are always going to be firing. Why do Reuters stack like that? Are they that slim? Yeah, baby. They're very slim. They've been dieting a lot. And that's the primary reason why the Reuters are able to stack that way. ESOC live in 14 minutes. Indeed they are.